So Babur writes this about his own father. His father never missed the 5 prayers, and his father is a king, by the way. Right? MashaAllah. His father never missed the 5 prayers, his life, and making up any qada that he had. He read the Quran very frequently and was a disciple of His Highness Khaja Ubaidullah. Khaja Ubaidullah Ahmadi is the direct descendant of Bahauddin Naqshband. So the Babur, the verses later on, he says that his father never left the house without an amama. Never left the house without an amama. So I mean, you can imagine a world where the Muslim leader is never missing a salah. Right? I mean, what kind of world and existence that is, where the boys by the age of 9 or 10 can read Arabic, Persian, and Turkish. And one thing is you can just read the letters. One thing is you will actually understand what's going on. Because at the age of 9 or 10, you can read Arabic, Farsi, and Urdu fluently. I mean, this is an education that we can't even fathom today. And obviously this is why you become Jahangir, world conquering, right? Anyways, very briefly, this is a miniature by him on the right. That's Babur when he crosses between Samarkand and Bukhara as a prince. His father dies at the age of 12. And as I said, the greatest Muslim city in the world at that time was Samarkand. Samarkand was the capital. It had the most amount of ulama, the most amount of muhaddithin, the most amount of fuqaha, the most amount of ghazis, the most amount of artists, the most amount of poets, all in one city of Samarkand, because also Timur had pillaged people to Samarkand. And because Samarkand was the crowning jewel, Baghdad had lost its splendor, Damascus was no longer relevant, Jerusalem no longer relevant, Delhi was not even a Muslim city, not even in the conversation, Lahore was not really a Muslim city, not in the conversation, Makkah, Medina had never had the industrialization that these cities had, so it was really just Samarkand and Bukhara. Babur, at the age of 14, besieges the city of Samarkand. So he's already a scholar, he's already a poet, and he launches an invasion of Samarkand. And what's actually very interesting that in this, he's a direct descendant of Genghis Khan on his mother's side, and he's a descendant of Timur Lang on his father's side. So he has sort of best of both worlds. The Jami'iyya is very interesting. So at the age of 13, 1497, 5 years after Christopher Columbus set sail from Spain, and 5 years after Muslims are exiled from Spain, Babur launches an invasion of Samarkand. So you can see how the ayah is mentioned in the Quran, وَتِلْكَ الْأَيَّامُ نُدَاوِلُهَا بَيْنَ النَّاسِ. Allah rotates the days of good fortune and bad fortune amongst various parts of the Muslim world, as we're seeing. He with just 2,000-3,000 people, he conquers the city. His own uncle invades, his own chacha, his father's brother. Both his father's brother and his mother's brother were very envious of Babur's position and sort of his place in the Muslim world. So they invade. He sort of becomes exiled. I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but anyways, Babur actually conquers Samarkand again, gets kicked out again. And what he does is he flees to Kabul in Afghanistan. And about the next 20 years he spends in Kabul mainly writing poetry. So about 20 years he just spends writing poetry and Hanafi fiqh. And we have many of his poetry. One of his famous Farsi lines is Maghu dur as padashahi as darveshi. Don't say that kingship and Sufism are distant. Man padashahim dali bandai darveshim. That he says that don't say that kingship and Sufism are separate. I'm a king, but I'm a slave of the Sufis. Man badashahum vali bandai darveshanim. He has many other lines in poetry, both in Turkish and in Persian and in Arabic. And this is something that really becomes phenomenal. Remember, his dynasty would rule until the 19th century. The 19th century, until if the British never came, the Mughal, his family would still be ruling India. There would be no Pakistan, it would just be obviously still India. Anyways, he flees to Kabul in 1502. He had wrote a letter to the Ottoman king, who had just conquered Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem, Sultan Selim Yavuz. In 1516, the Ottoman king had conquered Mecca, Medina, and Jerusalem, had destroyed the Mamluk Empire. And he wrote a letter asking for help from the Ottoman king. The Ottoman king said that I can't necessarily help you right now, but I'll send you 2 engineers, Mustafa Chalabi and Mustafa Rumi. And he said I can also send you cannons, and they will be of great. And he's definitely going to start using them. But anyways, as I said, he loses Samarkand. He gives up on Samarkand and says this is not going to be possible anymore. He flees to Kabul. Also, the terrain from Bukhara to Kabul is phenomenal because he flees just with 20-25 people in the middle of the night. And he's basically in exile for 20-25 years, and he's just wandering. And you'll see how Allah sort of makes it up. These are actually coins that were minted by Babur. On the back, so on the front, you can see La ilaha illallah Muhammadur Rasulullah. On the other side, you can see his name, Zahiruddin Muhammad Babur Badashah Ghazi. What is incredible about Babur was that the thing that he loved most in the world was flowers. He devoted almost 200 pages in his memoir to just flowers. So the language that has the most amount of names for flowers are two languages. One is Farsi and the second is Latin. So especially in Farsi, he would know every single genus of flower that he encountered. So he has a whole section in his memoir just devoted to flowers. This is a Muslim man who's very comfortable in his masculinity. That is very absent today, but in that world, the idea of loving flowers was not seen as a feminine thing. It was seen as, as a very human thing, to look at a flower and be lost in a flower. Right? And the idea that flowers are just a creation of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and they're the highest form of beauty on this earth. Right? Nargis, Yasaman, Yasameen, Nilufad, right? All of these various flower names that now nobody... If I were to ask someone what Nilufad means.
An Ottoman princess who married Nizam.
No. It's a flower. Not everything's about Hyderabad. There's more to life that I'm also Hyderabadi, but Nilufad, she's named after this Persian flower. But this is so he was born in the Farghana Valley. So he lovingly describes everything, right? So spring morning spent amid hillsides dotted with wild violets, tulips. Tulip is what? Lale, right? Roses, gul. Cold running water passing through a shady and delightful clover meadow where every passing traveler takes a rest. Beautiful little gardens with almond trees. How do you say almonds? Badam, right? In the orchards, pomegranates. Anar, right? Renowned for their excellence, good hunting and fowling. Pheasants which grow so surprisingly fat that rumor has it that 4 people could not finish one they were eating with its stew. So it's, what you see is that there's a lot of culture, right, in this, where people know many languages, people know law, people know sort of various things, that's sort of going on in the world. Also, what he loved more than anything was gardens. So this is actually a miniature of him building a garden in Kabul. They were called Char Bagh, 4 gardens, because you would have 4 separate gardens that were divided by water. So you can see it there. This is in Kabul. I think it's been destroyed, unfortunately. It was rebuilt.
Babur is still there.
It's still there, yeah. So you can see him on the right. That's him actually organizing. And when he went to India, he said one of the worst things that Indians don't have is that Indians have no taste for beauty. And he found no gardens, and we'll discuss some of his memoirs, as he says. As you can see here in Farsi, that he built, and you can see all of this here. And I think for him, obviously, what he had taken was the ayah of the Quran, Jannatin tajri min tahtiha al-anhar, of gardens underneath which rivers flow. And he had put that in a way of building a garden on this world. So the Taj Mahal is actually, remember Taj Mahal, Shah Jahan is his great-grandson, right? So this comes from his vision. Before Babur, there were no gardens in India, right? Also, we're going to talk about sort of social interaction in India before Babur. And again, as I mentioned, there are 600 million Muslims between Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Before Babur's dynasty, we can say maybe there were about 50,000 Muslims in this whole region. So this is something, to go from 50,000 to 600 million, is something that you can't even imagine, right? That happens under one dynasty, Khandani Taimuri, right? And this is, he's a very, very knowledgeable man. When he's in Kabul, as it would happen, Afghan kings would, they would raid Punjab, mainly Punjab, which is present-day Lahore, Amritsar, Sirhind, etc. And they would raid a little bit, they would return home to Kabul. But Babur is a little bit more interested in building an empire. So this is India on the invasion of Babur. So you see Babur's kingdom in Kabul on the left, and then you have an Afghan Pashtun dynasty that's ruling India again. After Timur had destroyed the old one, the Lodhis, they were Afghan Pashtuns, and then you have Hindus everywhere else, right? The Rajputs are Hindus, Malwa is Hindu, Berar is Hindu, Gondwana is Hindu, Bengal is Hindu, Bijapur is Hindu, Hyderabad is not even a city at that time, Gokund is Hindu, Vijayanagar is Hindu, which is because by partition, many of these cities would be majority Muslim. Hyderabad would be a majority Muslim city, Lahore, majority Muslim, Srinagar, majority Muslim, Dhaka, majority Muslim, Chittagong, majority Muslim, right? And so these people had never even heard of Islam before that, before Babur comes. These are some quotes that Babur had written. This is Babur in Agra. You guys know Agra in India. He's at the capital in Agra. He says, Hindustan is a country which has very few pleasures to recommend for anyone. Indians have no idea of the charms of friendly society. The reason he mentions this is because of the fact that in India had the caste system. So Brahmins and Dalits are not interacting with each other. So in Islam, the whole idea is that everyone is equal, right? So when he was coming from Afghanistan, Samarkand and Bukhara, Muslims are obviously interacting with each other. Yeah, you can have wealth, but you look at someone as an untouchable in Islam. So he's absolutely shocked when he comes into India that people aren't talking to each other. That people, red zoning that happens in America today, that was happening in India back then. That people are literally cut off from each other. And he was very shocked by this. He was like, how can you have a society when people literally see the opposite person as najis or untouchable? Right? And so which is why he says that, this caste system he was very, very uncomfortable with. Because in Islam, obviously, that's the whole purpose of Islam is to remove the idea of caste, right? They have no horses, no good grapes, no melons. Babur loved, how do you say watermelon? Tarāwīh, right? They have no watermelons because in India, watermelons are not a native fruit. The Afghans brought it to India. No good fruits, no ice or cold water, no good food or bread in their bazaars, no colleges because there were no madrasas, obviously. In Hinduism, you can only study Hinduism if you're a Brahmin Pandit. You can't study from another caste. So there's why build a college if only Brahmins can study, right? So, but for Babur, the whole idea in Islam is that you would build madrasas. In Ottoman Bursa, 50% of all property was owned by Muslim women. And all of that, and they would endow properties for madrasas, for masjids, for wells, all of this stuff, right? This is a short reflection, when he visits a Hindu temple. In terms of his invasion of India, he mentions that there's two routes from Afghanistan into India. He says one is between Kabul and the other is through Kandahar, and when you go through Kabul, you go through the Khyber Pass. So he brings in about 10,000 people, and you can see him, in his army, sort of flowing, passing through rivers and such. And this is the route that he took from Kabul down into Delhi. So you see Kabul through Peshawar, through Lahore, through and then into Delhi. And when he faces in the first battle of Panipat, he has an army of only about 10,000 people, and he faces off with an army of about 100,000. And that also 100,000 army also has elephants, which obviously Babur and his Afghan soldiers don't have. But what Babur does have is cannons. And we know that elephants are very afraid of loud noises. And that's really, so these two Ottoman engineers that the Ottoman king sends, Sultan Selim Yavuz, the Khalifa of Muslims, actually becomes very, very helpful for Babur in defeating this Afghan Indian army. And he actually wins the battle just within a day. And it's actually pretty phenomenal. It seems we probably don't have too much time left. But this is just one of his reflections when he goes to a Hindu temple. Also, what we know is that in India before Babur, obviously people didn't wear hijab. Most people didn't even wear clothes, by the way. And this is something that's also Babur is very struck by, that Hindus are not really wearing clothes, and the army is also very confused because there's no Islam. And even the idols themselves, like the idols when you go to Hindu temples, they're mostly they're not dressed. And Babur is very sort of struck by this. So he goes to Rajasthan, and if he conquers Rajasthan, he says next time, also what's very fascinating is that every entry that Babur has in his diary is after namaz. So he'll be like, after Fajr we did this, after Zohar we did this, and this is across 55 years. So imagine somebody's whole chronology of their life is just demarcated by what namaz they prayed. So instead of being like, yes, so it's, Babur won't say yesterday in the afternoon, he'll say yesterday after Asr, or yesterday after Maghrib, or yesterday after Isha. I mean, that whole sense of even defining time is lost. People don't talk about time like that anymore, right? Which is, and obviously this is somebody who knows 3-4 languages. I mean, today, when you go to Pakistan, most people can't even read a basic Urdu book, which is, very, very tragic. When I was in Lahore, I was like, "Aap intezar kar sakte hai?" Like, and I asked somebody in Lahore, like, "Can you wait?" And he's like, "Oh, मैं wait kar sakta hu." I was like, "What? You couldn't at least say intezar?" Anyways, he says, next day at the time of Dhuhr prayer, we went out for seeing those places in Gwalior. Gwalior is in Rajasthan. We had not seen, going out of the Hathi is elephant, Hathi pole gate of the fort, we're at this called Urwa. Not Urwa Coffee, Urwa. Solid rocks surround Urwa on 3 sides. On these sides, people have carved statues in stone. They're of all sizes, small and big. A very big statue is perhaps 20 yards high. These statues are all together naked, and even their private parts are not covered. Urwa is not a bad place. It is an enclosed space as big as its statues. And Babur ordered that they should all be destroyed. Now, this is why Muslims are, sort of in trouble in India, because we destroyed their but parasti. What's that line of Iqbal? Surat na parasta man, but khana shikasta man. Right? And these are some other comments that he had. Most Hindus believe in the transmigration of the soul. Transmigration, i.e. reincarnation. All artisans, wage earners, and officials are Hindus. Another thing that Babur is very curious about is that Muslims had ruled Delhi for about 400 years before Babur. And within 400 years, less than 1% had converted. Whereas in Afghanistan or Iran, within 200 years, the entire country had turned Muslim. In Spain, within 150 years, the whole, Spain and Portugal had become majority Muslim, within Palestine, Syria, Iraq. So Babur has this sort of question, is that why is nobody converting to Islam in India? Right? And this is something and one of the major reasons is because the Brahmins did not respect the Islamic tradition, did not respect Islam, because they were like, you guys are a new religion. We've been here for 5,000 years. What do you guys have to offer? And the Afghan kings were not really concerned about intellectual discourse with the Hindus. They just wanted the Hindu gold. This is something that Babur is that how do we sort of establish Islam in this country, right? And now, obviously, we have a lot to show for it. This is a really interesting reflection by the great British author A.M. Forrester. Probably don't have time to read it. I don't know. Should we read it, or you guys want to pray Tarāwīh? You guys want to pray? Okay. This is his grave in Kabul in Afghanistan in the 1700s. You can see the grave in the back, and then you can see some Muslim men sort of sitting around it. This was painted by a British traveler, but he's still buried there today in Kabul, and which is why this is also the extent of the empire when Aurangzeb comes, right? So Aurangzeb is the first king to sort of unify, Afghanistan, India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Burma, and parts of Cambodia within one Sunni Hanafi empire, and this happens within 250 years, and that's why. This is also very interesting. Babur, when his son is born, Humayun, in Kabul, and they throw an aqiqah for him. So, which is why when Iqbal goes and visits Babur, he has this very sort of emotional reflection that Khusha nasib ke khaki tu armid inja ke in zamin se tilsame farang azad ast. That how wonderful it is, Babur, that you're buried in Afghanistan and not in India, because at that time India was under the British. Because this land is free from the magic of Europe. That Kabul is 1,000 times better than Delhi. And then I'm not going to read the next line. Agarche pir haram darad la ilah wird la ilah darad kuja nigah ke barandatar ze pawlad ast. That even though the Shaykh of the Kaaba, he knows la ilah, but he doesn't have the vision to see what's coming on in the future. And this is obviously Iqbal's sort of critique of the ulama at that time. But yeah, this is just a very, very, very short demonstration of this king's life that I would say the majority of people in the Rome would not, none of us would be Muslim today if not, especially for him. And as the Prophet said, "Man lam yashkur nas lam yashkurillah," that if you don't thank people, you cannot thank Allah. And the Prophet didn't say living or dead, alayhi salatu wassalam. And so we are, and that's why the hadith in Bukhari. سبعة هو كيف نشرح حديث سبعة يظلهم الله neither hadith nor history سبعة يظلهم الله لا ظل إلا ظل عرشه. There will be 7 people on the day of judgment. There will be no shade except جز بصايا خداوند, except for the shade of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim and Tirmidhi, by the way, 3 sahih. And then the second category, what does the Prophet say? Sultan al-Adil is a just king, a just ghazi. And this is just the barakah of what, and that's, the Prophet didn't say a great worshipper. The Prophet didn't say, right, a great father or a great mother. The Prophet didn't say, a great imam of a masjid. The Prophet didn't say a great alim even. Can you believe that? The closest person to the shade on the day of judgment, Bukhari hadith. This is again, every time I quote hadith, I have to make sure, because when I talk about Indian history, people just assume that I don't know hadith. But even though 15 years we studied, but still, this is what people think of history. So this is incredible. Why did the Prophet say this? So the Sultan al-Adil will be closer to the throne of Allah than an alim or a mufti or a qadi. Bukhari hadith, alayhi salatu wasalam. And you can see the effects of that. Tens of thousands of ulama that have become India, Pakistan, Bangladesh would not have been possible without him there. There's no doubt about this. So you can see just one person can have such an impact. Hazaron Sal, Nargis Apni, who can finish it? Ruri pe roti hai, because it's feminine. Bari mushkil hai se chiman mein di davar paida. That the narcissus flower weeps 1,000 years that it has no light. And how difficult is it to raise a vision, di davar, a visionary in the garden? And this is what Iqbal is asking. How come Muslims can't raise and produce visionaries anymore? When Babur stands outside of Delhi, he quotes a hadith. First he quotes the Quranic ayah, وَعَدَ اللَّهُ الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا مِنْكُمْ وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ. I'm going to assume you know the meaning of it. And he says that, the Prophet said, I feel a cool breeze coming from India, alayhi salatu wassalam. He quotes this, Babur. Again, he's an incredibly knowledgeable person. And he said there's only been 3 people who have had this khush khabri, this glad tidings of conquering this land. He said Mahmud Ghaznavi of Afghanistan and Muhammad Ghori of Afghanistan, and I am the 3rd. And and this is something to understand where you sit in time, sacrality of time. We ask again that if we can, at least do some Fatiha, especially those of in Pakistani descent who owe their Islam to him. May Allah bless him. He's in Kabul. His city has seen so much war for the past 40 years. We ask Allah to grant him this grave site, that has, I think, was bombed in the 90s. No, yeah. It was literally bombed to the ground, and such a beautiful image. And that whatever khair and a'mal that we do in this month of Ramadan, may at least those of us at least that are products of his world building, his empire building, his religion cultivation, his tarbiyah of Islam in India. The most amount of huffaz today is produced where? In India, Pakistan. That wasn't happening, by the way, before he came. There were no huffaz there. So, a lot of Tarāwīh in America is on the backs of, someone like him. قدس الله سره العزيز رحمه الله إمرا نضر الله إمرا, as the Prophet said, that may Allah brighten the face who hears my words